Hi, and welcome to a special episode of our Experiencing Consciousness podcast. We are
Roxanna Erickson,
Catherine Rossi.
And I'm Jan Lipa.
We are so happy you are here.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of our podcast. Today we are with Dr. Catherine Rossi here in Krakow and with Dr. Roxanna Erickson-Klein from Dallas. And we are here with you after a short few months break, right? And today we're going to be talking about a topic of how a therapist working with clients, with various clients, sometimes difficult clients, can or should or ought or may take care of themselves to work, to work efficiently, and also take pleasure in working and in doing other things in life. So
absolutely. Well, one of the things that Jan and I were talking about earlier today is that your father, Milton Erickson, he was really a master of rehabilitation. And in the opinion of Ernest Rossi, he was even better at rehabilitation than he was at hypnosis. And very few people know that or think that way. And so certainly by example, he really knew how to take care of himself, and he helped other people to take care of themselves. And maybe you can recall some of the either papers that he wrote or things that he shared with you, Roxy, about how to take care of yourself as a therapist.
Well, what I think of when I think of him specifically, Milton Erickson, how did he take care of himself, and how did he take care of the family, and how did he take care of his patients? All of those things were intermingled and intertwined and woven together, and all building on one another. The main thing was to be present in the moment and to be actively aware of and even searching for what around me now or within me brings me a feeling of joy, of pleasure, of happiness, of well-being. What is it in my environment, in my presence, in my history, in my feelings right now? And so to give an example of that, I'm sitting here now with a couple of professionals that I really deeply respect, and remembering my father, who, is deep in my heart, feeling lucky to be here in this moment, appreciative of all that I've gained over and the fun of sitting here in this pretty room that I'm in that's got the wall, the colors painted the way I like them, and the sculpture of my dad over my shoulder. So it's kind of drawing together all of these positive things in the moment of now.
That's extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. And of course, happiness lies in the present moment. Mm-hmm. And my little short step thing is the past has more to do with sadness and depression. The future has more to do with anxiety and anxiety of the unknown and planning, sometimes over planning. And so one of the first secrets, should we say, about a therapist taking care of themselves is to come into the present moment.
does it have something also to do? I mean, because I wouldn't be myself if I didn't notice that you also have an extreme experience with taking care of yourself and rehabilitation, with the accidents you had on surfing, and also you do probably have a lot of experience with the process of recovery of Dr. Rossi from the stroke, from the hemorrhage that he had earlier. So those are also one-of-a-kind experiences that you maybe would like to share some hints from there.
Sure. Well, I'm well versed in looking for the numinosum every day, that which is fascinating, tremendous, and mysterious. And that's almost an immediate choice that I go to is what is it that's interesting about the experience? And when I had the surfing accident, and it is a misguided idea to decide to learn to surf at the age of 53, you know, I should have tried this in the younger days, right? But I don't know what age I am, unless I look at the calendar. And so through really no fault of my own, because I was very careful and very aware of where I was when that surfboard hit me, I was in 1 foot of water in a 1 foot wave, and the wave was going to decay into the sand in about 8 feet or like 2.5 meters. And so it wasn't as if I was irresponsible, but the leash on the surfboard, the wave was still so strong that, and the leash was on my leg, that's when the surfboard was lifted by the wave and it hit me. And the first thing that I thought was, this really hurts. The next thing I thought was, all right, I'm in waves and a new one is going to come in 7 seconds. That the responsible thing in the ocean is, the rate the waves are coming in. And so I knew how much time I had to get the heck out of there before the next wave came. The next thing that happened, and all of these are in fractions of a second, is that I had more emotions. I was more angry in that moment than I'd been in my life combined. And it's like, wow, this is really interesting. And, again, it's the numinosum. Whoa, I've never experienced this before. And then I said, okay, move your fingers, move your toes, determine if you're paralyzed. And my fingers and toes moved. It's like, okay, how many feet do I have to crawl to get out of here? And so I crawled halfway. I detached the leash on my surfboard, and then I sat in the sand. And I knew it was an outgoing tide, so it wasn't like I had to scamper way away from the waves that were coming in. But I was really fascinated by having emotions that were stronger than I'd ever had in my entire life. And so I said to myself, I mean, my life was flashing through my eyes, and I wondered, am I going to have a hemorrhage and die? Like, this sort of thing. I wondered, well, I was in a remote place and the other people I was surfing with were a couple hundred yards away. And so it wasn't like anyone was right there to be with me. And all I could think of is, well, if I die, Ernie really knows I love him 100%. So I don't have to rush to the phone, which would have been a boat ride away. It's like, no, I'm okay with that. And so I was asking myself, well, what do these emotions mean? What are they saying? And it was an eye-opening experience. And I still say this today. What are emotions for? They're screaming, I'm alive, I'm alive, I'm alive. And when I understood that, it was irrelevant what the emotion was. So I didn't stay with anger, but I was filled with emotions. And through a lot of the healing of that traumatic brain injury, there was a lot of emotion. And so it's like, well, it's screaming, I'm alive. I can look in the mirror and I'm alive. I can feel my breath and I'm alive. And I never took emotions so seriously after that. So that was like one of the things. It's interesting, isn't it?
And if we look at it from from one more point of view, what would be your advices to people that need to, get through something like that, either it's an accident or it may be, you know, if you're working in therapy, it may be a severe emotional crisis. Or, you know, it can be anything. Something happened in therapy that is terrible or difficult, and someone needs to kind of put themselves back together. What would be the lesson that
Well,
you took from
the thing is that that when you're a psychotherapist, you always have to be open to to get triggered into something that you need to heal from. And when if I get triggered, it's been a while, but I remember getting triggered a lot when I was a new psychotherapist. And it was always, oh, good, here's something I need to work through. That was the attitude that I took. Not, oh my God, I've got a trump, I've got a trump. No, it was like, oh, good. Well, this is coming up for healing. In my ethics and my morals is to not ever ask a client to take care of me. I need to take care of me. I'm there to be there for them, to help them in the best possible way. So I would be really grateful. And then I would either make a note for myself or at the time, or I would make a note for myself later that this is something to work through, because I could be a hindrance to a client's therapy if I don't work this through, because if it's come up before, it's going to come up again. And you know, what Roxy was saying is, you know, what she learned from her dad is present moment, present moment, present moment. And I'm grateful for anything that comes my way, whether it's difficult or not. And so, you know, it's really a gift, in my opinion, if you get triggered. And sometimes if you get triggered, and if it's something that you really need another person there for you. And whether it's done where you have consultation or supervision as a therapist, or if you decide, you know what, I need to go into therapy myself for this thing that's come up, for this issue. But just being open to every possibility. What do you think about that, Roxy?
Well, I'm reflecting on what goes through my mind as, and the thing that strikes me really as one of the most important lessons I have ever learned came from you. And that was when you and I were in a difficult situation, and I was just boiling over with being treated in a way that was totally inappropriate. And you stood there and said, happiness is a choice. And I was like, yeah, but I'm mad and I'm upset and I'm feeling disrespected and I'm, you know, and I'm having all this. And you stood fast with that one phrase. Happiness is a choice. It's okay if you go in that direction, but don't forget, happiness is a choice. And for me, that was a pivotal moment. That was really a pivotal moment. And sure, if I get in a really difficult situations where my feelings are getting the best of me, I can think back and remember, oh, happiness and joy. I can stay in this whirlpool, or I can choose to be happy. Now it's up to me. It really empowered me. But there was another thing that I wanted to call attention to, and I'm going to briefly summarize it, and then it's Jan's turn to tell us what he does. So for me, I think as a professional, one of the things that, you know, when it's, you know, probably for most professionals, you want to be able to do good work. You want to be able to do it effectively and efficiently. and you want your patients to benefit from whatever it is that you're doing. And sometimes you recognize, I don't know what to do, or I said something that wasn't the right thing to say, or I'm limited in my own way, or I misjudged, or some of those normal things that come up in the course of sharing information. And for me, it's a matter of being honest with myself. Boy, I didn't see that coming. And in the professional chair, I'm honest with the person I'm working with, and I've learned to express myself gracefully. This isn't what I expected, or things are not coming together as I would have hoped, So I've learned to express myself honestly, but gracefully. And that foundation of honesty truly opens the doors for, redirecting when things are going in a less than ideal direction. So, which they occasionally do. And then for me, I can be, pat myself on the back. Good, you were honest with the client. We worked through it, and now we're redirected and have another opportunity to, to do better next time. So I'm curious, Jan, what ways do you deal with this, and what key bits of information can you offer?
Well, according to some of my friends, my way of working around that is to engage in more work and work even harder. But that's not entirely true. I mean, I believe in the power of supervision. So I've got one of my supervisors in here and the other in Katowice. And whenever I do have a problem, I put the burden of that problem on them. Am I not?
We talk about it.
We talk about it. And those talks, the cool thing about supervision is that you get different perspective on things than your own. So I always kind of assume that my perspective is way more limited than I would like to. And the thing that my problem is that, in therapy situation, when something doesn't go as I would dream, which means my dream is that my client would meet their needs in the therapy sessions with me. But when that doesn't go according to plan, the first thing I do is I go and I think to myself, that's my fault. And although I know that it's not always entirely true, but the advantage of thinking that, in my case, is that if something is my fault, then I can somehow repair it. So, I do have the control over that part of the situation. So even though some things may not be entirely my fault or something like that. So, some interactions are like half of the responsibilities on my side for something, half on the other side. But I am responsible for my half, and I see it as 100% because that's something I can take care of. And that's one thing. So I kind of go through extensive supervision, and I really love that process. I don't know how I would end up without that. It's particularly, in my case, particularly important when you work with someone on difficult subjects, because they kind of, those kinds of things kind of bring a lot of emotions into play and everything. But the other thing, and that's actually, I think, to a degree, a controversial topic, and I would like to address it here and ask your opinions on that, is, and I will do a certain introduction to it, so that would be my part, and then I would like your opinions on the subject, is because other than supervision, there's also an idea of psychotherapy and the fact that Dr. Rossi actually addressed that briefly before. The idea that the therapist should go or not undergo their own psychotherapy. And the cool thing is, there are some therapists, at least here in Poland, that the therapists there represent the stand that they don't need therapy so much because they are the experts and they modify something, and they don't need their ideas to be modified to be able to modify other people's behavior. On the other hand, on the contrary, you've got classical psychoanalysis where Sigmund Freud said that you need to undergo at least 10 years of your own psychoanalysis to become competent in doing that. Other way, there are currents of thought in CBT in Poland where they say you don't need your own psychotherapy to be a good therapist, but on the other hand, there's like, for example, there's David Burns who once said, and that appeals to me. He said it in a playful way. He said to someone, how you call a psychotherapist who didn't underwent his own or her own psychotherapy? And the person said, I don't know. And he goes, a hypocrite. Because how can you, how can you provide someone with someone that you don't believe in? That was his idea. So my own development was that when I started doing psychotherapy, I was at the standpoint that you don't need psychotherapy to be a good psychotherapist. But on the other hand, I underwent my own psychotherapy thinking about that. But then there was a particular seminar that I actually attended, and there was that was a seminar that was that actually was built from few models. So we were actually working. It was few meetings. We were like a meeting few times during a year, and she was working with us, the girl, and also a psychotherapist, and she had some of her problems that were not resolved, so to speak. And whenever she was talking about anything at the seminar, she was referring to her problems. She was going to demonstrations and all the time going through her problems. We were at lunch and she was talking about her problems. And at that moment in time, it struck me because I thought to myself, I don't believe that she is able, to take that away from her when she's working with clients and just leave it behind the door and say, that's my problem, and now we're focusing on you. Because she wasn't controlling, the fact that she was always constantly talking about it. And that was the point, and it was pretty far away from now, it was in the past. But that was the point I realized that some people really do need psychotherapy to then provide psychotherapy. The problem is that we don't know who needs it and who don't. So now I'm on the stand that it's way more safer to expect from people to have their own psychotherapy, so to speak, just in case, even if they don't need it, because they may need it. I mean, I am the last person to determine if I need psychotherapy, if there are some unconscious things working at the back of my head and or orienting me towards things. So it was my transformation kind of, but I'm actually really curious about what do you think about that? Because in Poland, that is now at least between some approaches, some environments, a kind of hot topic. If you need the therapy, what form, and then how much of the therapy you need to to be able to practice and so on. So
it used to be required in the States that if you wanted to be a therapist, that you needed to have therapy yourself of at least a year or two.
Well, it depends on what theoretical framework you're educated in. Because if the school you went to, focused on CBT, it was not a requirement. But if it was psychodynamic, then it was a requirement. So there was a lot of variations about, there's not as much consistency in education as one thinks, that there is. But so Catherine, do you have an opinion as to whether seeking your own therapy is necessarily builds competence? I mean, that's the question.
Well, yes, of course I have an opinion about this. So, we've been talking about how do psychotherapists take care of themselves. And the word that Ernie heard the most often from Milton Erickson, was comfort. Now, not all of Erickson's students heard that same word, but Ernie really took that in and dedicated his life really to comfort from within himself, and also helping the people to find comfort within themselves. And so to me, the very simple guideline, like, if you're a licensed professional and you're uncomfortable, then it's a good idea to seek help. So to me, what help you seek is going to be according to what help you think that you want to have. My opinion about having psychotherapy is that I don't think there's a downside to having psychotherapy. When you want to explore issues that are unresolved, you want to be free, you want to be clear within yourself so that you can be clear with the loved ones around you. You can be clear with your children. You can be clear with your clients. Like, if that is important to you, it's not a bad idea to seek psychotherapy. If you are in therapy with a really competent psychotherapist, what you will learn experientially is huge. But the other aspect of it is, so if you're in psychotherapy with someone that I don't know, you're just not necessarily seeing eye to eye on these things. Wow, that's positive too, because you're learning what not to do, of what doesn't resonate with you. So we live in a social world, and theoretically, although most people in the world of psychotherapy don't practice this, but theoretically, we want to make psychotherapy available for anyone who wants it, and that there isn't any stigma involved, and there's something wrong with me because I'm going to go to psychotherapy. Could there be something wrong with you? Sure, it's always possible, but it also could be that there's healing that's coming up for you, and all the other ways that you've been trying to deal with it haven't quite brought you to that place. And so you seek help elsewhere. I'm talking about almost like generic things with comfort. But if you're triggered by something, and remembering a trauma that feels like it's brand new, by all means, seek out therapy. Don't suffer. Don't suffer. So be comfortable and don't suffer. That's what my motivations are for this. And if anyone wants to stigmatize you because you're going to therapy and you are a therapist, you might want to think that one through.
On the other hand, if you are afraid, being psychotherapist, that someone's gonna spot you doing psychotherapy to yourself, that's actually pretty messed up situation. I mean, what do you think about the tools that you're actually using and offering to other people? That's what I would think about.
I have a little story. I was an intern. You have to work for so many hours under someone else's license before you can then independently practice and pass the tests and whatnot. And so the person I was under supervision with, and I only had about 3 months left of needing to be under supervision before I was going to be able to take the test, get my license, and practice independently. And he pulled me aside one day and he said, "I'm in love with you. I want to leave my wife and be with you." I was so angry. It's like, have you not read about dual relationships? And then he said, "And my therapist encouraged me to tell you this." And I'm thinking, your therapist has never heard about dual relationships. You couldn't wait a couple of months until I was independent. So I had to leave that situation. I had to find another supervisor with so little time left. And then, for God's sake, I had to go into psychotherapy. Why? Because I was afraid of people like me. Because I mean, it was a terrible, terrible, terrible situation that I was in, but I had to work it through because I didn't trust that, certainly his therapist, who he talked me into going to see him for a couple of times, which I did. She didn't do anything for me. But, so I was afraid of people like me. And I thought, well, if I'm afraid of people like me, then I'm afraid of me. And so I had to go to psychotherapy. So I selected this guy that had really good reputation. And the first thing I did when I'm sitting across from him in the room is I drew a pretend line in the sand and I said, "Don't cross it," and but I couldn't believe it. I had to go to psychotherapy to heal from, that sort of trauma. And I did. I kind of laugh about it now, but can you imagine if I wouldn't have gone for that help? If I would have continued on in my career distrusting psychotherapists because of one bad experience? It was just one bad experience, after all. And so, so I practice what I preach. It's like I was in trouble and I sought help. I think I saw that guy for about 6 months. And
Which one?
Yeah, which one? Yeah. That psychotherapist. And
still, which one?
Which one? The one that I paid for psychotherapy.
All right.
Is the one. And
the other one, the second one.
Well, to get help.
Yeah.
But I was also not receptive for help because I was afraid of him. I was afraid of everyone that was a psychotherapist. It was a heck of a thing to work through. But by golly gee whiz, I persevere. If I have a problem, I want to honestly find a solution. I don't want to lie to myself about these things. And as if I weren't ethical before, because I was, oh my God, my morals and ethics in regards to being a psychotherapist are very well defined. And that I know that if you come and see me in psychotherapist, the number one thing that you need to know is that you can trust me. It's the number one thing. And that came from that experience. So it wasn't about my style. It wasn't about my education. It wasn't about anything. It was, can you trust me? And I know that I'm trustworthy. And so that's what I gained from that situation. So the ends did not justify the means in that situation, but in the end, I stood above, I rose above, and I'm not afraid of psychotherapists. Since that time, it's been about 35 years ago, sort of thing. But it was a very important milestone.
Well, I came at this from a somewhat different viewpoint. And my first career was in nursing. And one of the fundamental foundations of nursing is knowing when to call for help. I mean, that is absolutely the number one thing as a nurse. You can't be effective as a nurse unless you know when to call for help. And so in my transition from my primary career as a nurse into a therapist, I brought that right along with me. That one of the most important things, and I expanded it not only for nursing, but for all people, all health professionals. It's not just limited to us on one hand, it goes all the way up through the most educated, the most famous, the most advanced, the top of the field. Everybody needs to know when it's appropriate to call for help. And it's not only help for the patient, but it's also help for the caregiver. And so when I was thinking about my foundation, knowing when to call for help, that means to me, if I have a problem, I need to call for help. If I have discord, discontent, if I'm ruminating over something, if I'm having a negative sensation over something, it's time to call for help, very simply. But my thought is that, I approached it somewhat differently in that I kind of built a network around me, a cohort of colleagues that I can talk questions over. Is this normal? Is this not normal? What do you think about this? How does it resonate with my own feelings? Is this a big problem? Is this a mistake? Is this a little problem? Is this something that's going to self-resolve? And all of those little interim steps in that one takes in recognition of a problem and then seeking professional help for it. And so I do not come from a background that says, that I need psychotherapy, in order to be a good clinician. And it doesn't even necessarily mean if I go through psychotherapy that I'm going to be any better than I necessarily would be without it. But what I do believe very, very strongly is that exposure to a cohort of professionals, differing ideas. What do you think, Catherine? What do you think, Jan? Your viewpoint is necessarily somewhat different than mine. Your way of problem solving is a little different than mine, but me taking in that information, giving it due consideration and making my own choices is very, very, very helpful. And it also helps you distinguish, is this a mountain or is this a molehill? Is this something I'm going to get over tomorrow, or is this something that's legitimate? It's like really worrisome. I want that external input when I'm feeling something. But to that, I also want to add that I have sought therapy for problems, but having this professional cohort, it gives me the inside view. This one uses these techniques, this one uses that technique. What is going to resonate best for me? I sure that don't want to go to the psychoanalyst that thinks he's going to keep in his office for 10 years, because that would not work for me. And to just make a point is that, in a way, there is no downside for seeking help. But there is a cost. There's lost opportunity. There's other ways that you can spend your time and energy.
Well, I think
So-
we've got, like some fantastic points of view here.
That's true.
And
you also highlighted one more thing, sometimes going to a therapy is important, but there's also a question of, there are approaches to therapy that may be more useful to you and some that will not create a change that you need, or help you in a way you actually require. So that's another thing, that there are, I think, around 600 currents of psychotherapy, and it's fair to say that not all of them are actually useful, because of many different reasons. So that's another thing. I think that's a topic that's extending way beyond our current topic, or even the topic of this podcast, because it's probably so multifaceted. But it's also very important thing,
But I think we've stimulated a lot of thinking for people that are listening of what you need to do for yourself now, what you might do for yourself in the future if certain things came up. I think it's always a good idea to notice when there's some really good therapists out there, like should you need a helping hand, and having cohorts, big and small, that it is a really, really good idea. And I think, that's an excellent way to take care of oneself, so that you're not alone, and that you can confirm that the directions that you're taking are good directions, or if you need to maybe rethink, and that that it's and most therapists are really happy to create cohorts, that they really like it. And even though the three of us have similarities, we're very different in the way we work, and that's something that is so valuable.
Yes, Tran, I would like to highlight one more thing, because you highlighted the very important idea to have a group of professionals supporting you, and you both are part of my group, for example. And actually, because since, for example, my point of view on the whole thing is that I did a lot of psychotherapy on my, I underwent a lot of psychotherapy. So it's fair to say that I kind of went through the whole process totally. Although, how do you judge if you need some more when you are a psychotherapist? So my way of doing that is that when I'm consulting either with you or with, with my other supervisor, or any other professional, and too many times I hear, you really should kind of reflect on that, or, well, you may be acting out something on this client. It's good to think this through. If I start hearing that more than once, I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's a time to go and consult someone, because maybe there's something to be done. But the beginning, nowadays, when it's fair to say that most difficult parts of my life are somehow worked through. The most important thing now, it's a feedback from professionals that I'm working with. So this is the beginning, all the time. So it's crucially important.
I would always tell you if you were losing it.
I will also tell you
And
that.
you would also tell me. I would tell Roxy. Roxy would tell both of us. And because it's an honest relationship. And that relationships that we have, and you need people in your life like that too, that say, you know what, it's time. Report back to me when you find somebody.
Right.
So I think that the moral of the story is to surround yourself with wise people, and if too many of that people tells you really should do something about it, then it's wise to check if you should or shouldn't with someone else than yourself, right?
Well, and go into comfort, and as Roxy says, don't be hesitant to ask for help.
Right. Know when to refer. know when to ask for help.
Right,
Refer
yeah.
yourself if you need it.
Exactly.
And I do think we're put on this earth to be happy. We just have to figure out how. And I'm touched that you took that message in so clearly, Roxy, of happiness is a choice, and that it comes back to you in times when you need to be reminded.
Right.
Isn't that actually your father who said that happiness is actually an ability to utilize what you already have?
I don't know if that's an exact quote, but that was certainly an orientation to life.
Okay, so thank you very much for today. It was an extremely great meeting, and I really actually did miss you a lot. So I'm very happy that we are back on track.
We're back.
Exactly, we're back.
Okay. Well, great thing to do with you, and thank you. I really enjoyed our discussion.
So thank you very much, and see you next time. This was another episode of our Experiencing Consciousness podcast. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Jan. You're the best. Be well, be happy, celebrate life.